Should have brought my mandolin, man. We could have just jammed.
Do you want to jam out? I got my uke somewhere.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the garden party. This is the garden party. We want a garden party with you. Ooh. I am so off. Oh my God. We're starting over. I did it last week. I messed up the ending and the song. Okay, here we go. This is the garden party. This is the garden party. We want a garden party with you. We talk about the plants we grow and some things you might not know. The garden party. I think it's because I churched it up and tried to add a bunch of extra chords to the scene song. That's why I messed it up the first time.
Yeah, you went back OG
Phil,
song.
Introduce yourself, dude.
Welcome, everybody. It's your favorite plant parent, regular parent, back on his favorite podcast on planet Earth. Phil from Phil's Figs. I'm always getting fun with it. Wait, I keep talking until Destin gets his headphones back on.
He's just sandbagging.
Yeah, it's usually the meanest stuff that Phil says about me when I can't hear him. I'm happy as always to have you on, Phil. Is it cutting season? Is it propagation season over there in North Carolina?
You know it, man. It's always propagation season. I mean, I do a bunch of I start early, probably earlier than I would recommend for pruning your fig trees through the coldest month of January, but I pull out some tricks to keep them alive. Not necessarily they all work, but now I'm getting into it's time to prune them because next month they might be waking up, and I'm like, so
yeah,
I'm getting my propagations done. I did a heavy prune on a Smith fig that I filmed. So if you guys want to learn about harvesting suckers from your fig, it's up on the YouTube.
Always.
On the YouTubes, Phil's Figs is always on the YouTubes.
On the YouTube.
But yeah, we've been having some crazy weather here in Texas in the Houston area. It was in the 80s last week, and so all my figs are putting on new growth. It's really weird, man. All my desert roses and my plumerias in the garages are putting on new growth. It's so bizarre and kind of freaking out. But don't jump the gun, everybody. Don't start doing too much crazy stuff.
Jump the gun.
Because it's going to be 40 something tomorrow, and then we're going to be freezing next week. Maybe. I don't know. Texas is nuts. But I think Houston weather is pretty nuts. But I know someone up in the panhandle of Texas, who deals with some very weird weather. We got Vikram Baliga, the plant prof from Lubbock, Texas. What's going on, Vikram?
Yeah. So we hit 91 last week. And I woke up this morning and there was a sheet of ice on my my truck, and it's supposed to be 17 tonight. So we were in the 80s all last week. So I know all my trees are waking up.
Yeah.
And
I was on a conference call at 3:30 with a guy doing a job in Lubbock, and he said, "Yeah, it's 27 degrees right now. It's going to be 18 in the morning." I was like, "Dude, they had to shut down crane operations because they had ice on the crane today."
We had
it was nuts.
Freezing fog all day.
Yeah,
freezing fog.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Sounds like something you would cast in medieval times on people.
Cast
a spell of freezing fog on
living here is just like a big D&D campaign all the time, all weird stuff happening.
I think that's an attack from Articuno. She has an attack, Arctic Fog.
Arctic Fog.
One of the first original 152.
Yep.
Well,
we're hanging in there.
No, Texas is just hanging in there. Everybody is freaking out, not knowing exactly what to do, but that's what we're here for. We're here to let everybody know what they can do right now. And there's a lot you can be doing right now, but I also want to introduce a first-time guest. We've been doing a new thing here on the We do a lot of new things, but the same old thing always happens every time I start talking. Start buffering. But this year, my goal was to, I want to bring in new people with an OG like Vikram. So we got a first time. We got Sean Pessera, right? Pessera? I'm saying it right? Pessera, the mindful farmer. I almost said the mindful gardener. But go ahead and introduce yourself, Sean.
Yeah. I'm also a fellow Texan, and you got to forgive my voice. We were out sick all last week, and I've got lozenges and
it's going around, man. It's going around.
Oh, so bad. I said that if my voice cuts out, I'm just going to do interpretive dance the rest of the podcast.
Very welcomed here.
Okay.
This is perfect. I'm pretty sure Phil or Vikram knows sign language. We should be good.
There we go.
I do not. Just for the record.
I moved to Arkansas about 10 years ago from Texas. Never thought I'd leave Texas, but I've really fallen in love with the natural state. Moved up here to work with a large nonprofit, to work alongside about 30, 35 farmers across the state, doing organic local food movement type stuff, and providing technical support and things like that. I'm an ecologist by trade, with a little bit of ag background. And then this will be our 4th year now. I left that position to start Mindful Farmer when I really saw there was a lot of needs that the farmers had outside of just like technical support, but just there was nowhere in the state to buy greenhouses. There was nowhere in the state to buy silage tarps, organic seeds, organic fertilizer, organic potting soil. Like everything has to be shipped in usually from either the East Coast or the West Coast. And so, if a small scale farmer needs to ship in soil, he might be looking at like $1,000 to $2,000 just in that shipping costs.
Just a minimum, yeah.
Yeah. And so really the whole vision was to help support our local food movement by providing those essentials from in-state supply. So we're working with like byproducts from other industries like the timber and the rice industry to create potting soil and organic fertilizer and things like that. So we're like completing a loop from our own byproducts to make inputs for our organic farmers.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah, dude,
That's really
that.
cool.
I design garden tools as well. And then high tunnels. We manufacture and design custom high tunnels and greenhouses for growers. And now we ship those nationwide.
I'm putting your link in the chat as well. The link for
cool.
Mindful Farmer Arkansas will be there.
Yeah. And the other kind of goal of Mindful Farmer is to help grow backyard gardeners into the next generation of organic farmers. We need, most of our farmers are going to age out in the next 5-10 years, and there's not a good pipeline for the next generation of farmers. And so the approach of like high intensity, low acreage market gardening, like the Jean Martin style, has so much potential to help backyard gardeners for themselves. Like if you're just growing for hobby, you can do that a lot more efficiently with a lot less time and get a lot more food out of your backyard. And then maybe you're like, I love this and I want to do this full time. Or maybe your kids fall in love with it and they're like, hey, we want to do this. We want to grow up to be farmers. You now have this kind of like pipeline by showing how you can take a lot of those same techniques in the backyard garden and just scale them up. Like you were doing 1,000 square feet. Now you're doing, an acre or 2 acres or 5 acres.
Right.
Able to make a living doing that.
For sure. Because you are seeing a lot of these, a lot of the farms, like places that I grew up with were farms and like had cattle and stuff, are being sold and becoming subdivisions. A lot of these guys are cashing out. They're being subsistence farmers or whatever. They're being paid by the government to not farm certain things, which is wild to think about, to control the price of whatever crop. It's so weird. Growing up, I knew a bunch of people that had thousands of acres and their family were subsistence farmers. And I guess the thing is like, you get paid to not farm, but then like at any moment they can say, start farming and you're supposed to be operational. And like none of their stuff is operational, none of their stuff, so that, like you were saying, that pipeline that people have in like hundreds of acres is shrinking by the day. And the reason I really got into content, I watched a guy named Josh Satin Hill Farms. He was out of North Carolina, and he had a small backyard, and he was doing a CSA, just in his local community. And I was like, wow, he's getting a lot of stuff out of this small backyard, and it inspired me to start, vlogging what I'm doing, so it's definitely, you're absolutely right. There is a market for people to be growing a lot more food locally, efficiently, and organically, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's like, so part of my job when I moved here was actually to start and like run a organic wholesale farm. So we did 5 acres in cultivation, about 1,200 square feet under high tunnels, and all that food we sold to wholesale markets. and the profitability like could be done, and there was a huge demand. The hard thing that a lot of growers run into is right when you start needing to hire people. That's usually like the wall that people run into because there's so many new challenges. But the potential is there, and I think especially lately with like food prices at the grocery store going up and up and up, local food has never made more sense. Like, you can get grass-fed, free-range organic eggs, from your local farmer for the same price as what, the big box store or the big grocery store is going to charge you, probably even for like something you don't actually know if it's even, checks all those boxes. And so I think that's where I get excited is I'm constantly keeping track of the prices in the grocery stores of could I match or beat this price with a local product that is more nutritious and organic, and then at that point, like there's no arguing it. If someone's like, well, I can't buy local because it's expensive, but if it's the same price, and so that gets me excited.
Sometimes it feels that way, definitely with the threshold. People now you have grocery stores that aren't even meeting like the Costco prices. Like Costco seems to be holding out that threshold. And even these local grocery stores are getting it. So the market, when you go to the fresh markets, and hopefully they're becoming more abundant, it'd be really cool because all of a sudden now you get these smaller places where that soil is still really good with all those micronutrients. And I think you're on to something, Sean. That's really cool to hear. You're literally doing everything. So I don't know where to start. I have like 10 questions now.
Well, I mean, I know we talked about the pipeline of like the future farmers, like Vikram, you're at like kind of the source, kind of like at the young, you're seeing the young people coming out of high school, going to college before they even buy their first home. Are you seeing like a drive for young people to want to become more involved in growing their own food? Is that what you're seeing growing up?
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think the way that they're looking into doing it is different. We get a lot of students out of rural Texas, rural cities coming off of farms, and thinking about different ways to approach it. I think they see the way that their families run their farms for years and years, and we have a lot of cotton up here, so there's not a ton of people coming to me that are already growing vegetables and stuff.
A lot of monocrops, right?
Yeah, because I mean it's we're large scale ag up here in this part of the country, and mostly commodity crops, primarily cotton. But there's a lot of people interested in growing their own food, and I taught this past semester sustainable vegetable production, and just hearing some of the students get excited about it. I had them essentially pick a crop. They were in teams. They had to pick a crop and like build a sustainability plan and figure out how they're going to sustain their business economically, socially, and environmentally. And they had to kind of break it all down. And like anything, there's always a few students that wake up the morning it's due and they're like, "Oh crap, that's today."
That was me.
Yeah, it was me too, if we're being real honest.
It's relative. It's been me before, and it has been me. Now it depends on the class. Depends on everything.
I was more of a theory guy. I was a theory guy, not applying it.
Actually doing it. But there were a couple of them that I was like, they put a lot of time into this. Like, I feel like I could take this to a bank and ask for a loan with their business plan. And so
that's awesome.
It's pretty cool just seeing them get into it. And
that's inspiring.
It was for me, and they got to hear from. I have a friend that runs a nonprofit up here in Lubbock called Growing Together Texas, and she coordinates with so one thing she does is work with school and community gardens to help develop them, find grants for them, those kinds of things. But then she also works with local growers, kind of like you're talking about, Sean, and has a sort of built-in CSA program. And there's a local brewery where people can go and pick up their box every week. And I think she did, it's not huge yet. It's just a couple years in, but she did like 50 or 100 shares this year. And, a lot of people were interested in it. And so it's, with everything going crazy a little bit, kind of like we were talking about, it's encouraging for me to see people like you, Sean, like taking the reins on some of these local food markets and regionalizing our food system and really just building local economies too. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's inspiring, man. That's really cool to hear. because all I've ever heard growing up is like, oh, this next generation, we're screwed. Like, that's all that's all I ever heard, but I
the
am
kids are okay.
No, yeah, for sure.
The kids are okay.
I'm seeing it in my viewership. I don't pay a ton of attention to the demographics, but I am seeing a younger audience start to get more involved and asking more questions and wanting to learn about how to grow food. It's very interesting. And Sean, I mean, how many first time gardeners are you getting? I mean, it must have blown up since the pandemic. I mean, it's gone crazy.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Oh, you're good, dude.
Totally good.
I feel like my point of touch is like I kind of break it into gardeners, homesteaders, and farmers, and so
it's a big difference.
It's a big difference. But I think a gardener can start homesteading, can start farming, and so I've seen growth at kind of like at people at every scale. There's a lot of first time gardeners. I'm relaunching a course in March called the Beginning Gardener Bootcamp for those people. It's like their first season. I'm really passionate about like helping people save money and like not feel like to get started, they got to get, all the raised beds and the bags of soil and the this and that and all this, the stuff. Like, it's like, I want as minimal approach as I possibly can because that's so much more approachable and easy to teach. And then a lot of people, like when I go to conferences, like homesteading conferences that are like, hey, we just left our job in California. We just bought 40 acres in Tennessee. What do we do? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I am seeing farmers and that I feel like I've seen a lot of people where they're kind of coming to it as a family. They're like, hey, I'm not ready to leave my job, but my wife wants to do more full-time stuff. We've been having a huge garden, but we want to take stuff to the market for the first time. And so we have like a little community in Northeast Arkansas called Paragold. And there's probably like 30,000 people there. Last year, I built probably like 10 greenhouses for people.
Wow.
But it was their first time. They've had gardens for years. They maybe have gone to a farmer's market, but their plan was to use the greenhouse just to take food to the farmer's market and other surrounding communities. And so that was super encouraging. In a town of 30,000 to have basically 10 new farmers. That's really cool. So at every level, I'm seeing a lot more interest and demand.
For sure. Well, and Phil, I mean, y'all all have kids. I mean, y'all know the cost of how much more it costs y'all to go to the grocery store nowadays.
Oh, I grew peppers specifically because of economic offsetting. Because you go to the grocery store, it's like an organic pepper. One pepper is like $3. You're like, come on now, like
that's the price of a plant.
Yeah, and I'm coming on my third season of overwintering my peppers, and like, and they wake up a little bit in February, and I put them in my greenhouse. Like 3 of them have like brown, like lignified trunks already, but
yeah,
I would plant more seeds, and I would buy. I had last year they were a little delayed, but the year before, for like 3 months, I just never bought peppers, and I had them all the time. I had them on a weekly basis, and I think like it's like those subtle things, and that just offset everything a little bit. Like my neighbors across the street who have a dozen chickens. I live in like a neighborhood. Like Destin and I, we live in neighborhoods, and we have all this. Like we don't have a lot of space, but we have enough space. Like they just drop off a dozen eggs because they have a pile of eggs over there, Yeah. And
you can only eat so many eggs.
You can only eat so many eggs, yes. But you start to see like neighborhood community vibes, and like it's nice hearing someone like you who seems to be the fascia of the community and stepping up and saying like, I'll do that, and I'll be the liaison between all these people and help facilitate something that we've had before, but we've gotten away from, I feel like. So
yeah,
kudos.
There's such a disconnect. Mm-hmm. There's such a disconnect.
I like to hear like Vikram's perspective of the matriculation of where the students are going when they graduate, and maybe where they start, where they work themselves into. I don't know if you've seen like a 10-year career plan for them, but I'd like to hear about that.
That's interesting. And we have some data on that. We try to keep up with our students after the fact. just thinking of a couple specifically, I've got some that are going, well, trying to go work for the USDA and some different organizations. Unfortunately, I actually had 2 students that had USDA jobs that were supposed to start on January 21st, and they no longer have those jobs. And so, like, that's a tough thing. So, some go into sort of government regulatory kind of stuff a little bit. Research is where a lot of them are going. And that could be independent research. Like some of them are working for like independent research groups, foundations, even nonprofits do some research these days in this space. I have a student that works for, or a former grad student that works for American Horticulture, which is a big professional organization. They're the ones that put on the Cultivate conference in
cool.
Ohio every year.
Yeah.
And he is the subject matter expert for one of their lobbyists. So like when they need information to go talk to the government about like, hey, the industry needs this or that, he provides a lot of subject matter to them. We have some that go back to the farm. We have some that work for schools. I've got a student right now that's looking at being a garden teacher, a school garden teacher for the district. And so there's a lot of cool places and a lot of things they go into. Some start their own businesses, right? There's some that are pretty successfully, like there's one student that's growing strawberries and another one that's doing, similar things like that. So there's a lot of different things that they go into. And, something that we try to tell them is that horticulture, agriculture, food production, whatever, is so diverse. Like if they want to do engineering, mechanics, like shoot, there's a huge demand for that. If they're on the tech side, like so much now is like AI and computer driven, like there's a big demand for that. If they want to get into policy, if they want to get into research, there's so many options. And it's really cool seeing them sort of learn about that, take the reins of that just a little bit, and be creative with their careers. Like that's exciting to me.
Yeah.
And have the support to be creative, not feel like they're being funneled into something like, you know what, I can just go do that. And everyone's like, absolutely, go for it. Right. Especially if there's grant opportunities out there for them.
Mm-hmm. I had a student that his master's research was in aeroponics. So he built all these aeroponic systems. He learned how to code them all for the timings, for the pumps, for the relays. So he learned about electrical engineering a little bit. He coded all the Arduinos himself. He learned about the nutrient and water needs of the plants.
You shared some of this with me, didn't you? You sent me like a video of some of the stuff he'd done, right?
Yeah. Super cool stuff. Like he was growing lettuce so he grew lettuce heads with twice the biomass of a traditional hydroponic system with the same amount of water. And so like really cool stuff. And I don't know. I just, as an educator, it's really exciting to see them come up with new ideas and be like, hey, can we try this? I'm like, I have no idea if it'll work, but yeah, let's do it. Like, let's see what happens. Like that's science, cool. Right? Like,
yeah, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Some of the best things that come out of science are like, that's weird. How did that happen? Yeah. And then you're like, oh, and then you figure out why.
No, that's awesome. I want to talk to Sean about how he built started building his own greenhouses, his hoop houses and stuff like that. But before I do that, I wanted to bring up, I had a dinner. I talked with him at TNLA. I met him at TNLA, and I had a dinner the other night with a company called Maruyama, and they're a Japanese company. They make like mowers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they brought me some stuff from Japan that I'm going to be doing some trial and error, like trying out the products. And it has a lot to do with micro bubble like generators. You know what I'm talking? You know what I'm talking about, Vikram? Like the surface tension breaking. Do you know what that? Like, can you explain that? Like, kind of what that means?
A little bit. I don't know a ton about it, but I do know that we had a student that was researching hydroponics, but with dissolved oxygen, which I think is kind of what probably. So they have like these systems that pump micro bubbles into the water. Which is supposed to help with like nutrient uptake and water uptake efficiency, and other stuff like that. And I don't remember now. He wasn't my student, so I don't really remember now exactly what his findings were. But it is something there's a lot of research going into because we take plants that are supposed to grow in the soil, supposed to, whatever that means, that normally grow in the soil. And we stick them in a bucket of water, or we stick them in a trough full of water, and their root characteristics change, their growth rates, their growth characteristics change, and we got to figure out how to get them to do all the things that they do in terms of like taking up nutrients and sort of accumulating those nutrients for food value, in a system where they wouldn't normally grow. And one big limiting factor tends to be oxygen availability. And so by dissolving oxygen with microbubbles into the water, you aerate the roots better, you get more what we call very fine roots, which are normally like where all the water uptake happens, the nutrient uptake happens, and you get healthier plants that grow a lot faster and a lot more efficiently.
That's really interesting. Okay, I'm excited to try it because they have a generator like will run on like 120 or 240 or whatever. But they have a shower head adapter that helps with like eczema and it's like that. It's like and they have this. I'm the only person, and I'm not going to show it. I'm going to show it in a video because it's awesome. I'm the only person in North America who has this watering wand. I'll send y'all pictures. It's stainless steel. They had to get the adapter for regular water hose for you can't find them in America. They're not available. I was like, this is kind of cool just that I'm the only person that has it. It's really neat, dude. I'll send y'all. It looks like an alien tool. It's pretty freaking cool. I'll send y'all pictures.
Very cool.
Yes, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I want one.
I'm interested in checking it out and seeing how it works. But Sean, no, I wanted to ask you. So you started making your own hoop houses. Y'all make everything in house. You have a warehouse and a team that does this now. Makes the kits all here in the U.S.
Yep, all here in the U.S. It started off. I bought like one of the hoop bending jigs from a company and mounted it to a trailer, and I built my first tunnel in the street in front of my house. And just like it was kind of like Wayne's World when they're like car, and they have like that car pass, and I keep bending pipes. So yeah, that was how we started, and we're still very humble. We do a lot of things by hand, pretty small machines, and then we can put together whole kits. We do a lot of installs. So when I first started out, even before I was bending our own pipes, I was just installing other people's high tunnels, other manufacturers. And I just started like making a notebook of like all the things I didn't like about it. Like that's not a strong connection. Like that, I don't like this design. The wood rots out or whatever.
What were a few of those things you didn't like? Like just certain joints that they're making, certain.
Yeah, like certain points of connection that were really weak. A lot of times end walls can be really weak on a tunnel, and if that gives way, the whole tunnel gives way. And so we have really beefy end walls that I'm pretty proud of, but they go up super fast. So we kind of created a really unique framing system for the door that I don't think anyone else is currently doing. That helps you to install the end wall really quickly, but it's stronger than most conventional end walls. So things like that, there's a lot of things too that like I just wanted to be committed to in terms of like the Gothic design, which helps to shed snow. And like this past year, it's like, well, it doesn't snow everywhere, but Florida got snow. It snows across most of the country now. So snow and like wind issues can be a big deal. And then if you're in the hot, humid South, like, and you use wood for like the hip boards or the baseboards, it's really going to rot out pretty quick and need to be replaced. And so we do like an all metal kit, only Gothic. We do supports on every single bow. So there's a truss on every single bow. And that does double duty as well in that, like, I build my tunnels a bit lower. I recommend them a bit lower so that the truss is about 7 or 8 feet tall. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's like our small little backyard kit. And then we go up to like 3,000 square feet, 30 foot wide by almost 100 foot long.
Oh, wow.
And so with the trusses, you can actually like in our strengthened end walls, you can attach 9 gauge wire from one end wall to the other end wall laying across the top of the trusses. Yeah, there you go. And then you can use the whole greenhouse to do all your trellising. So the whole greenhouse is low enough to where you can reach everything, tie a string up to that wire, trellis your tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers to the greenhouse and not have to pound any T-posts or cattle panels or anything like that. So anything I make, I want it to be like double, triple, quadruple duty and do lots of different things and help save people money because now they don't have to worry about all this complicated trellising. They can, their greenhouse system is their trellis system.
Well, and because that's always my biggest pain, because here in Texas, I mean, I only need a greenhouse for like 2 or 3 months out of the year. The rest of the time I take my plastic off, and because we have hurricanes, I take my plastic off, throw a shade cloth on it. And the biggest pain for me is building in walls. And the Shelter Logic kit I've got, the frame is fine, but the in walls were trash, man. They were trash. And so I frame them up with like a storm door and everything. But every year I got to go and take all that down. And yours looks like it's almost like a conduit, like set way you set the door up and everything. It looks kind of nice. It looks really nice and easy to put together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to last a long time. Like that frame will last 50 to 100 years.
Nice.
That's awesome, man.
Sorry.
No,
and then the plastic has to be replaced every 5 years.
Yeah.
Plastic, got it.
And so it is UV treated, so it won't get crumbly the way that plastic typically gets, but it does need to be replaced. It'll start to get cloudy, or it may start to get weaker and rip in certain areas.
How do you pull it tight? How do you keep it tight from getting like billowy? I've seen people try to assemble those.
Yeah.
Wiggle wire, man.
Yeah, wiggle wire. You got to wiggle. Put it in the channel and then pull as tight as you can. And then as you put that wire in, it'll actually kind of push the plastic back into the channel, and then it pulls it a little bit tighter. We've also found too that like even on a cold day, just rolling it out in the sun first and letting the sun heat it up against the ground will help.
100%.
More
easy
to stretch.
Dude, yes. Oh my God. It is. If you try to put something up like that on a cold day, the plastic is not much fun to play with.
No, and it's like fresh out of the box, and you're just
Same thing with irrigation. If you have that 3/4 inch plastic tubing, I throw it out there in the sun and let it warm up so you can actually let it be malleable.
That's good. Yeah,
that's for sure, man.
We when I was working for the extension service, we had these big high tunnels that were like, I want to say they were like 30 by 70, like they were huge. And it's shocking how little wind it takes when you're trying to like reskin those before it's like I'm gonna reach orbit, like I'm gonna like it's crazy. We had like 8 guys out there trying to hold it down, and we were just like, we are not doing this today.
Yes,
yeah.
Kind of scary.
That's wound up being a service that we provide is just reskinning people's tunnels, because I've got it down to a system now. Like as long as it's not windy, if it's not windy, I can do it by myself, even on like the 100-footers. And I choose a series of ropes and channels that I can use to like grab the plastic and pull it over. But there was one time I was doing one where there was no wind to be found until I had the plastic all the way over, and then it was
exactly how it is.
Oh, it only happens when you do as soon as you're ready to do plastic, the wind's like, guess what? I'm here now.
Exactly.
I tried to make my fig glue, and I like tried to like just like put a tarp over top just to like some extra insulation, and as soon as I pulled it out, the wind came, and like you watch me like throw it, and it just like blows right off, and I'm like, well, that's not gonna work.
Do you know Dirk Tanner? Do you know him?
Yeah.
I forgot he was Arkansas too. Yeah,
he's Arkansas.
Yeah, he's just down the road from me. I think we did a little podcast together. I was on his podcast a few months ago or something.
Sweet. Yeah, he came on really on, and he's out in the sticks, and he is like his internet was back on the old software I used to use, and I think like it took a week for his end to upload. And it's like, Dirk, you got to get fiber before I can let you back on, dude. It was bad, man. Or you got to go to Starbucks to come on or something. No, he's really cool. He does a lot. I think he just recently shut down his farm store, but he still grows a lot of stuff out there. I mean, he does a lot out there.
Yeah.
Is that one of your greenhouses though? Is that one of them?
I think you might have a farmer's friend. I can't remember what he's got.
I got you. Yeah.
I have a question now. Oh,
yeah.
You go.
No, go.
My thought on, you had mentioned, and maybe this is because I casually throw my brain into like land around North Carolina. But you think there's like a big transfer? They said a lot of the farmers are older and they're looking to like, are they looking to pass their farm on and they can't find a buyer, or they're looking for someone to inherit the farm? And like, where's that void happening between the old farms and then the new farmers coming up?
Oh, that's such a complicated thing. I feel like it doesn't get.
We'll take 2 points on that. Let's
Okay. Yeah.
so.
Yeah. It could be a whole topic just on this. I feel like in the whole back to the like the homesteading thing, like land access is a huge point, you know, because it's only gotten more expensive. They're not making any more of it. And like right now, if you want to go start a farm, you have to make a ton of money in some other thing in order to afford the land. But then you don't have the education to actually steward the land well. So there's like, it's a big catch-22 of the people that can afford the land don't know how to use it. The people that went to school for it will never be able to afford it.
Or know about like the tax, the grants and all that stuff you can use to, like, nobody knows everything. Nobody has all the info.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are some programs that help. Even those can be hard to navigate. Like we've looked at the Farm Service Agency for loans for us finding land and us doing our own farm again. And it can be tough because my experience with that has been a lot of times they don't know how to work with specialty crops, all vegetable type stuff. That's going to be most of who they're working with are people that have basically are buying their parents' chicken houses. 9 times out of 10, that's who they're working with. And so, you know, even just trying to talk to them about what crops I'm growing, it was like, wait, you're growing like cabbages? You can sell cabbages? Like it was we were speaking 2 different languages. And so to try to build a business plan and defend that to FSA is going to be challenging depending on what part of the country you're in. And as Phil, what you're saying about kind of how that land is transferring, I haven't seen a real clear track for that, like a real consistent theme. It's been kind of all over the place. Some people just want to pass it down to their kids and their kids want nothing to do with it. And it just is going to stay in the family, stay locked up. There's so much land in America. Like we don't need to do the whole indoor farming stuff because there's so much land. It's just tied up. It's just sitting empty is the issue. And so that they're just passing it down and no one's using it. Or
it's being developed by developers. That's what it is here.
Because developers could go in and just like drop a whole bunch of cash.
And a lot of those people will even just hold out. You know, like I did residential development, like the environmental work in Houston before we moved up here, and so I was seeing, you know, them doing, taking these beautiful farms, and then I'm out there doing the wetland delineation, knowing it's all going to be houses, you know.
I mean, I get it. Like I grew up in a development in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in Amish country, and a lot of that stuff was happening over and over. Like my development was next to, there was 1, 2, 3 farms, and one of the farms had sold. The farmhouse is still there, but my neighborhood used to be the farmland, and so they kind of grew up in that space. But I hear this, like the business side of me listens to a lot of the handover of boomer businesses, because the boomer generation is trying to retire, trying to get out of it. And it's kind of like when you explain it with farmers, they're part of they're a piece of that puzzle too, like all businesses of that generation. And they don't know how to like get it out. And us millennials and Zers are like, how do we get into this space? Like there's this big touching point.
Disconnect.
You're the first person I've talked to that's like trying to find a solution to that. And I think that's really cool. And I'm really intrigued now. To see how that goes.
There's not a lot of clear answers. Like there are, because the interesting thing too is like, I mean, like the land use and land use determining value is a big issue. So land isn't valued for its agricultural value; it's valued for its recreational value. A lot of times, even down here in the South or across Texas, like you could have horrible land, but like if some guy from the city thinks he can hunt like big bucks on it, you know, he'll drop whatever money he can on it. And And so that's a big issue that we're running into even here in Arkansas is
Wow, yeah.
some of the farmland, the conventional farmland, like for rice and stuff, might be getting bought up by people just trying to hunt ducks. And so the rice is just kind of a byproduct so that people can hunt ducks a couple months out of the year.
Yeah.
It's
Interesting.
I don't have an answer to it. It's so complicated, but how we make that handoff, and I think part of it is a cultural conversation of like reminding the older generation, like, hey, you can't take this with you. Like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? You know,
I've seen so much of that where these guys, they work until they're dead. These farmers don't retire.
No,
They work until they die, and they have no plan afterwards.
Yeah.
Their sons and daughters have all left the farm. They want nothing to do with it, and so they're working at a law firm or working at doing something else out of town. We'll break it up into 4 sections, and we'll sell to who we want. And it's usually here in Houston. It's all land development. I mean, it's all it's all just subdivisions. That's all it is. It's the fastest growing market in the U.S. right now. It's insane. It's so crazy, man.
Well, one of the
Especially
things
because it's rezoned too.
Oh yeah, so zoning's an
Rezoning.
issue. I think ag exemptions are, I think, a complicated issue too, because then people who can just like throw a few horses or cows out there and get this ag exemption on something that they plan on developing.
They keep raising the minimum here. They keep raising in my county. It was like 5 acres. Then it was like 7.5 acres minimum, and now it's 10 acres minimum. To apply for ag exemption. Once you have it, you're grandfathered in. But like, and then the property value is going up so much that you can't buy land, to do what you want to do. So I think this, like, we had Cara on from England a couple weeks ago, and like, I think there's got to be something done. Like, they have those allotments in the UK.
Mm-hmm. They
have those allotments. They're not small spaces. They're big spaces. She was talking about square footage. It's not a small space. If you say you were to like, sell a big lot of land, and like the county says, okay, instead of paying taxes on this, you can donate a certain amount of this to the county, and then we could section this off for like allotments or something like that, and make something work, to where you could do something. Because there's not allotments here in Houston. Like 99% of all Texas is like privately owned. Like there's nothing. They have community gardens stuff, but that's not really. Like, I would have to drive into Houston, and like drive 40 minutes. It's not like down the block how it is like in the UK. Like, that makes so much sense. She said they pass it down from like generation to generation. Your allotment, and you have a greenhouse, and they have like a size like of my lot of my that I live in my subdivision for one allotment. That's a lot of space.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Oh, sorry. Go for it, Sean.
No, go for it, Phil.
It sounds like it's so funny when you brought the rice with the duck land, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, like they have this like monolith of a crop, and then they have the ducks in there, and I was like, there's so much potential with this locked up land for you to like divide and conquer all this cool agriculture that could be cultivated there.
Mm-hmm.
But we're like, who's going to lead us? And Sean, that's you. You're going to lead us.
Yeah, you're in charge.
There's a lot of organizations working on this right now. So like the World Wildlife Foundation, they have a project called the Delta, the New California. So
God, I don't want that.
Drawing up, not politically, but most of our food, most of our specialty crops, most of our vegetables come from like 3 valleys in California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for the whole country.
Scary.
Which is very scary.
It was like, yeah.
And so Arkansas is in the middle. Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Missouri. We got all this water in the Delta, and we have all these historical farmers that have been living there for a long time, know how to grow in that area. And so they're kind of their vision, or what they're exploring now, is to like, could we get some of these rice farmers, or at least some of the rice land, to be converted to specialty crop like what they grow in California?
Of course they could. Yeah, of course.
But there is so like you have to like. There's so many things you have to learn, and then industries that repair certain tools, that process certain vegetables. It's going to be a very big project, but the potential for that for Arkansas, it was something like in the like hundreds of billions of dollars.
Sure.
In terms of like revenue that could be brought to one of the poorest regions of America.
Yeah.
That has tons of resources to do this.
Dude, I drove through Mississippi, and Mississippi, I've always heard people talk crap about Mississippi forever. I drove through it on the way to Alabama. It was beautiful. It was freaking beautiful. Like, it was lush and green, and like, I was like, man, as soon as the people from California ruin Texas, I'm coming to Mississippi. I was like, I'm probably just gonna move to Mississippi after they ruin this place.
Yeah,
No, that makes a lot of sense, man.
Yeah. So there's some potential there. There's a lot of obstacles, and then the land transfer thing is going to be a big one. One thing I've been kind of just like toying around with this idea is, you hear everyone, especially on like Instagram or something, will say stuff like, oh, the urge to just buy 40 acres with your friends and have a little commune or whatever. And like, that sounds nice, but like, how do you actually take that step? And so I've been toying around with this idea, and I'm like getting out of my element because this is not I'm not a real estate expert by any means.
Neither are any of us. So you're good.
Well, then good. Well,
You're a good company.
Like,
Tell
if
us
you
the
go to
lies.
I want to hear this because I have something in my brain. I want to see.
Yeah, yes. So
in frequency
like big skyscrapers. Like, who can buy that, right? So what they do is they put together what's called a syndicate, which sounds criminal, but it's not. And it's basically like a small corporation of people, and that can like pool all their money together and then buy something that can grow in value and produces like a dividend to them. And so, hospitals, apartments, like all these big things that like one group or one business couldn't buy themselves. And so I was like, I wonder what that would look like for like a farm. Like, a farm is just as important to
like an ag syndicate,
as a hospital,
or a cult.
And so that there are current ag
an ag syndicate. That's for specialty crops.
You can get tax exempt. We'll start all these farm cults everywhere.
Sultan.
There are ag syndicates, but they do like commodity type crops. So like a syndicate the acre trader is something like along those lines. But like, what if it was specialty crop, and it was like 100 acres that you got 100 families to buy into, and then you lease the land to a farmer, you lease the farm store to a business that can run that separately. Maybe someone wants to build a coffee shop, and so it becomes a revenue generator for the people that hold the land. It becomes and then you could even put the whole thing in an agricultural trust.
And shareholders of the syndicate could get like a dividend or something.
Yeah. And even if it's a more almost like a social corp, like where they're not trying to make tons of money on it, but now they have a place that like they have access to, like they could go deer hunting in the back 40, whatever.
Is this what the Amish do, Phil? Like is this what the Amish people do?
I do not know if they.
That's your neck of the woods. I figured. I was like, it seems very communal and kind of like how they do their stuff. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a subculture that they're very tight knit community, and they like. You go up into, what Amish country, they are speaking Pennsylvania Dutch, which is a German dialect, and they have accents and things. It's really cool. It's very religious based. And so it's all tied to their religion and their churches. So
I got you.
But I don't know if it's all like one community land where they're all they're all vested in it. I think they still operate as their own entities in a lot of cases.
I was trying to think of like, I mean, other than like an Indian reservation, like I don't know like any other group that like functions like that. Like I guess like an Indian tribe would have like a tribal council. You know what I mean? Like. And they do like they get like a dividend, and they manage their land somewhat. Like, I'm trying to think of like a system that already exists like that to compare it to.
Well, that's like the Iroquois Nation, like up in upstate New York, like they are their own entity of their own country, like of their versus the Amish are not. They're still underneath. Like I don't think they do Social Security, but I think that they're under their own land. They're not. It's not like a reservation for.
Amish people don't pay Social Security?
No, they do or not. Don't quote me on that.
I'll say I'm converting if they.
Hey,
yeah, we're gonna get Phil in trouble.
I was laughing.
It's not writing. but I do not like. I think that there's like different. It's different than a Native American reservation.
Yeah,
I got you.
American Indian reservation, and like a syndicate here sounds like it's a way for land to be preserved for ag functions that people are helping to kind of. It's almost like a foundational tool of the economy. So like we all have healthy food in our area, and I like the idea too. It's like to break it down into smaller pieces of the United States, because I think of this as like I had a really fun debate with, or not debate, but like conversation where there's not, until we get to nuclear fusion, there's not really one energy source for the entire country to use that's sustainable. You have to find what's best in your part of the country, whether it's like hydroelectric, whether it's solar,
Firewood,
whether it's firewood. I don't know about that. Or nuclear energy if you're okay shoving it in Yucca Mountain, which I'm actually okay with, because we actually sell waste uranium to other countries as an export. But for them to remediate, but I'm getting on a tangential flight. There's not one source of ag behavior for the entire country. How you guys farm in the Pacific Northwest is not how you want to farm in Lubbock, Texas. It's not how you want to farm in Arkansas. It's not how you want to farm in coastal North Carolina. And so breaking it down into these smaller pieces, but having a platform on how to get it done like an ag syndicate would be really cool.
Yeah.
Real quick, I found the solution. We can buy a piece of like an acre of land in a bog in Ireland for like $5, and we can claim it as our own.
Be a lord. We'll have a fiefdom. I want to live in
They're
a castle.
attacking us! Quick, release the ice fog.
Release the peasants. Sorry, Vikram, I couldn't pass that one up.
Now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. What were we talking about?
Your ice fog from your fiefdom.
Oh, ice fog.
Oh yeah, no, that wasn't it. Well, now I remember. Sean, you were saying you're trained as an ecologist, right? Like you studied ecology. I think it's really interesting hearing you talk about this, because something I talk to my students a lot about is that, like, I think we can look at ecology in a lot of different, or we can find it in a lot of different things, right? An ecosystem works a lot of times because it's diverse and complicated. You've got lots of layers and lots of redundancies in a healthy, robust ecosystem. And obviously they're all different, but I think of our food web the same way, and our food systems the same way. Like we have a very sort of, it's weird because it's centralized, but it's spread out, which is sort of inefficient, or it's very inefficient, right? We bring some things in from California and some things in internationally, which is fine. It has opened up a lot of like available nutrition for people that we didn't have even 60 years ago. But it's also very fragile, right? It is a simple ecosystem in that if you pull one of those Jenga blocks, like the whole tower comes crashing down. We saw it in 2020. We're kind of seeing it right now. And so like this idea you're talking about of regionalizing our food system, like we'll still have the international parts, we'll still have all of that, but it just builds in redundancy and resiliency into our food system. And I think that going forward, like to make sure we're making, that we're keeping equitable access to healthy food and making sure people stay fed and have good nutrition, like those are the kinds of things we need to think about. Like those are the kinds of things we've got to figure out how to invest in and support and really build into. So like I love what you're talking about and what you're doing, because it's, from where I sit, it's so important just for our long-term, from a real basic standpoint, our long-term survival. We've got to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
You guys have seen it. You guys are on the lines where like a lot of the education systems, we don't talk about where our food comes from, and like that economic foundation piece of it all. We just assume it just shows up at the grocery store.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, and even like it goes even beyond just like I've kind of taken this philosophy of being self-sufficient in the necessities and like import the luxuries. We can still import bananas and coffee.
Absolutely.
We can't grow those things here.
100%.
But we're like, if around the world, if every country really focused on their local food production,
Yeah.
I think there'd be less wars. There'd be less reason for Russia to invade Ukraine to get their wheat production. Like if everyone is more self-sufficient, then like the world's just going to be a more peaceful place. Communities will be tighter. It's like sustainable agriculture is as close to like a cure-all as you can get it, like this side of heaven. It fixes education. Everything.
I'm going to disagree with you on one point. There is no reason at all that we should have to import bananas. Have you ever tried to get a banana tree, kill a banana tree? Like they always come back. I was like, there's no reason we couldn't produce all of our own bananas. I will disagree with that one point. We could produce every banana we wanted to.
Oh, I can kill a banana.
No,
Texas can kill a banana.
You'll kill it, then it comes right back.
I grew up like an hour south of Houston, down on the coast, and so there were some
probably right around where I'm from. Where did you grow up?
Jones Creek.
Yeah. Okay, I'm from Danbury. Texas.
Oh, right Danbury.
Yeah. That's hilarious, man.
Yeah, I'll have to ask you more about that. I have friends that went to Danbury. We'd hang out there in the city park.
Yeah,
late at night.
That's hilarious. Okay.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that on camera.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Only Batman's happening in Brazoria County after midnight. Yeah. There's only a couple things you can do after midnight in Brazoria County.
Yep. And someone already shot out the one stoplight. So
exactly. Exactly. No, for sure.
They shot it out. Oh boy.
Oh, multiple times. Yes. Yeah. No, there.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, I know exactly where Jones Creek's at for sure. I know where that's at. That's funny. No, that's really exciting. I love hearing people preaching the mission statement of like growing local, and you're even going a little step further. The whole thing I want to talk about tonight was your goal is like zero plastic, like using like less plastic, like trays and everything like that. You're a big soil blocker guy. Yeah. Like y'all are big on the soil blocks. Like how did you go from like the traditional, seed starting trays to soil blocks? Like what made you make the switch?
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate in that the very first gardening book I got was Elliot Coleman. Elliot Coleman is like the OG of OG gardening, like just all the French market garden based approach. He's the one who really popularized soil block makers in the U.S.
Really?
And before, it's a very old technology. It's just basically compressing potting soil or even garden soil mixed with, compost into little bricks and then starting your seeds in there.
Right.
So, before there were plastic trays and that was typically the main way people were making them, or using like clay pots or things like that. But, that can be really expensive to have a lot of clay pots, and where do you store all those and all that stuff? So soil blocks can be advantageous for a number of reasons. You can eliminate your plastic. You can eliminate a lot of materials and storage on the farm. You tend to get a healthier plant because the roots will air prune. So as the root hits the edge of that block, it prunes itself and then sends lateral roots throughout the rest of the block. So like whenever I like transplant my tomatoes, we'll actually transplant them up to a large size soil block. Like there's roots over the entire surface, but none of them are circling. Like they're not just going in circles like the bottom of a solo cup. They're like reaching their terminal edge at the edges of those soil blocks. And then when you transplant them, they just take off immediately. There's not the transplant shock. There's just so many advantages. So you wind up getting a bigger transplant from a smaller amount of soil because it's using that full volume of soil. And so Elliot Coleman was the first book that I got. And then, so we actually sell all the soil block sizes, even the big ones that stand up. We have those on the website.
Yeah.
The cool thing too is they nest into each other. So you can start with a really small block that moves into the next size block, that moves into the next size block, and then goes out in the garden. So you just get really, really healthy plants. That's the stand-up version there. So you can make
that's cool.
a ton at a time. I think those are marked $50 off right now.
Nice.
Cool.
The standing one.
And,
Yeah,
and, and some people might be intimidated by prices on certain things. It's because they're made to last. This is not made in China tool.
No.
Like this is not Amazon. This is made to last. Like
yeah,
I always tell people that, pay a little bit more for your gardening tools, pay a little bit more. We're so used to living in a disposable environment, where everything is just like, oh, we'll throw it away and get another one. Like I'm a fan of like Felco pruners because you have those for a lifetime. I like, if I'm going to use a seed starting tray, I want a recycled one, and I want it, to be able to go through the dishwasher. It's like that. And if I buy a tool like this, I want it to be like, made in USA, made in Europe, and be able to take a beating, and you're going to pay a little bit more, as you should.
Yeah. And that's my whole approach to even like designing tools. So like what you're showing now, that's my broad fork on the left side, the finesse.
It's beautiful.
And
is it powder coated?
It's powder coated. They're American made. Like they're actually made in Texas. So it's my own design. It's designed to be multifunctional.
Is that your wife?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so I designed them actually with women in mind, because a lot of the workers on the farm I was managing were young women. And so we got these big steel broad forks that were too heavy to lift. And then we got wooden broad forks that just bent and broke all the time. Yeah. And so I designed this one to be lightweight, but more ergonomic.
That's
and then
awesome.
The teeth too. The teeth are spaced every 6 inches. So once you broad fork, you just drag the whole thing backwards, and it rakes the bed smooth and marks your rows on 6-inch spacing. And then when you go to harvest, you just offset between those rows, and you can dig up your carrots without damaging them.
Oh, that's so smart, dude.
So I got rid of my bed rake because I don't need a bed rake anymore because I got that tool. It's our harvest. I don't have a pitchfork because that does the work of my pitchfork. So my goal for tools is as few tools as possible to do the most number of things and last forever.
And I will tell you, I use a hand broad fork for like my raised beds and stuff. I could use something like this, but I saw a huge difference when I started broad forking my soil. Dude, you notice a difference because your soil gets so compacted. Broad forking, I could never grow carrots. I could never grow carrots until we had our buddy Dirty Punk Gardening on, Jeremy. He's like, dude, you got to freaking broad fork your bed. And I was like, okay, I tried it. And dude, it's night and day.
Yeah.
Makes
and
a big
the cool
difference.
thing too is it gets better over time because the roots, like those carrots are sending down, like you're pulling up the taproot but it has more fibrous roots that are below it, and you leave those behind, and those decompose and make deeper cracks in the soil, and the tomatoes go deeper. So the faster you can get the roots as deep as possible early in the season, they're going to keep pushing deeper and deeper into the soil. And if you look at there's actually some really good stuff from the big commodity guys that do conventional corn. A lot of them have gone towards a no-till approach, which is really cool.
That's what I do. Yeah.
And they do these big soil pits, and they'll show how like with no-till practices over time, the roots of the corn are going down like 5-10 feet deep. Whereas the high tillage, they just hit a restrictive layer at 6 inches and just go straight out. And so the same things can happen with like our tomato plants with broad forking and helping them get deeper. Every year, they're going to push deeper and deeper. And then you're pulling up, you're tapping into like the groundwater, and now you're reducing how much you're having to irrigate and stuff. It gets me excited because it's like I have people say, oh, broad fork looks like work, and it's work in that moment. But then it's so much work saved for like the next decade to a century. You know what I mean? You're building.
That's the gardening I love talking about, is like do upfront work now so you can do a little bit less later, because you're creating this like foundation, right? And it's like permaculture too, and like soil building. Like you do stuff now to do less later, and all of a sudden you have this awesome.
Exactly. And that's what we found is like our garden is just, I can walk into any part of my garden and just like push my hand into the soil. And it started off as like red clay. And it's just every year we broad fork, it's just gotten looser and looser and looser. And my weed pressure is almost nothing.
Wow.
That's great.
So
and you sent me one of these, the razor.
Yeah.
Is this your design? Like,
yeah, that's my design.
The razor.
It's very interesting. Talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So if you look at the head of it, so like all my tools too, I design them to work together. So like that the broad fork makes my rows that are 6 inches apart, and then the cultivator's 5 inches wide, so I can run that right down the row
It's
at a
brilliant.
walking pace and kill all the weeds in between the rows of beets.
That is so smart, dude.
not
Yeah,
damaging
brilliant.
it. And that design, it's kind of made almost in the shape of a hammer. And
Yeah.
so on that flat end, you could hammer in landscape staples and flip it around and pull the landscaples up like a pry bar. You can use the sharp end down and be able to transplant. So I use that to transplant all my plants and my garlic. And then the sides on both sides of it are also a blade. And so then you can pull it just like a stirrup hoe or a collinear hoe. You can put that teeth. There's a little notch in that teeth where you can put that underneath like crabgrass, or I've even done saplings and then
Wow.
pried up saplings out of the garden. So the goal is for it to like literally replace all the other garden tools, and you just need like that one. So I'm super excited for you to play around with that one and just see what all you can do with it. Like
Oh,
you put
yeah,
it
dude.
in your, and just be like,
I'm glad I went to your site and saw like all, because I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
About some of the uses, like, because it really could be like a one tool you have to carry. That's so smart.
Yep.
Do you have,
One
do
tool
you
that
have,
does it all.
Short handle version, long handle version.
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have a show. You have like a smaller broad fork too. That's beautiful.
Well, that's actually our big one. So like that one's a lot taller and
Oh,
goes
is it
about
really?
it goes 1.5 feet into the ground. So like right now, Melanie has it like 16 inches into the soil. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
so much further than like any tiller will ever be able to reach. And I can do it with one arm and 1 foot, and I can just push it and pull back on it. So
Well,
it's just using it regularly, and then that one's at an 8-inch spacing. So for our bigger crops like our tomatoes, peppers, it'll do, it'll mark those 3 rows on the bed. So for broccoli, I'll do 3 rows per bed. Peppers, I'll do 2 rows per bed, and then tomatoes, I'll do 1 row per bed. So I'm still using it to do the same thing as like a bed marker.
Because I thought it was a little bit smaller just by that first initial picture. Because I would love something like this for like a raised bed. That goes like maybe like 6 inches deep or something like that. Like 6 to 8 inches deep. Like that's a little more handheld. That'd be really cool.
Yep.
That's really nice.
That's what I need. I need a baby version.
Yeah.
The raised bed version.
The baby broad fork.
Yeah,
that's
Man,
awesome, dude.
That is really cool. I'm gonna have to order some stuff because
same.
I love the whole like ethic behind it too. Of let's not make a bunch of little things that do one thing. I love the idea that this is high quality, even though it costs a little bit more. It does 10 things. Like it's there's a lot of value and a lot of efficiency in what you're doing. And again, that's kind of what we've been talking about, right? Is how do we make our systems more efficient? And I think it starts from ideas and tools and goes all the way up. And so I think that's just the coolest thing.
And y'all have seed starting soil and everything. Like y'all have all kinds of cool stuff.
Yep. And I'm adding to that too. We're about to have biochar, blood meal, bone meal. We're going to have a houseplant soil we're coming out with. So a little bit of everything.
Wow, man.
Because Arkansas is so rich in all.
You get the azomite.
Yeah,
Phil's an azomite guy. Hey, Phil, real quick. So I commented on the azomite video with you on it, and I was like,
they saw it and they're like, "This is sweet." And I was like, "Of course it's sweet. It's from volcanoes."
It's azomite.
I was like, "Thank God they got a geologist to actually be in a commercial for them, because that's the only person that could ever explain to me what the hell azomite even is." Because like, anytime I ask them, like, "What's azomite?" they say, "Oh, it's trace minerals." I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what does that even mean? Like, and then they're like, well, it's trace minerals. I'm like,
stop saying that.
What does that mean, dude? So,
once you get past the NPK and you go into all the other stuff, that's where you get in that, right?
It's all the macronutrients, not the micro.
It's the
micro, yeah.
Okay.
Micronutrients, like, and it's all about like, the stuff that really makes, even on a local level, that those really healthy foods, right, that have those minerals that are really good for your body all over, right? We can deplete those out of soil on a large scale, or we can be in places where there's just a dearth of them already in the soil. And having azomite is just like a great way. It's literally a rock layer that they mine, and
it's like dinosaurs. Right? It's pure dinosaurs, right?
It's volcanic ash.
Yeah, it can't
I'm
be
sure
a
dinosaurs
dinosaur. It's igneous, not sedimentary. So
Oh, jeez,
don't be-
Destin.
quit using big words. I want to put dinosaurs in my garden. Okay.
That's
but
funny.
yeah, it's like using that volcanic ash and sprinkling it in there,
Mhm.
and that's too cool.
Yeah.
So the way it was explained to me like well before was like that having the micronutrients is they're able to absorb more micronutrients, right, or macronutrients. Having the azomite, your soil is able to absorb more nutrients and not flush out as fast. So
It's more like the micronutrients help do the really meticulous physiological things of the plant, like like immune system response, regulating photosynthesis, or like all these like regulating type things. So, and it needs like such small amounts. Like if you go to like do a test on a depleted soil and you need boron, like the recommendation usually is like 0.5 pound per acre. Like how do you spread 0.5 pound on an entire acre of field? But like, the plant needs it. Yeah.
That'd be good for my garden.
It's got a little puff it around like that.
Yeah, just a
little puffer, like a perfume thing.
And like it needs it in such small quantity. So the azomite's so cool because it's already in a pretty good distribution of these portions, and so you can just spread the whole thing out. You can't really overdo it. It's just gonna whatever the plant doesn't use, microbes can take up. Like it's just a pretty good all around, like covers all your bases sort of thing.
So a little bit goes a long way when it comes to azomite.
Yeah, but it's something I apply every single year, and I put it on my lawn, my landscaping, my fruit trees, like everything.
I know it's real big with lawn people. Lawn people use a lot of it.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad, dude. I'm happy. We got in touch because like I really this year I kind of cut ties with a couple brands just because I'm looking to do more, not necessarily like not it doesn't have to be made in USA, but I'm kind of getting away from like, not that there's not some things that are made well in China, but like less made in China products. I'm like more, quality over quantity stuff, and so I love, people right in the backyard. We're not having to pay for ships to fly, to float over here with diesel and all that stuff to get the stuff in. You're making it right here in Arkansas. I love that, man. And you're probably stimulating the economy of your town, with all the stuff. Do you know all the people that powder coat your stuff and everything like that?
Yeah. So and they're in Dallas. So we work with a couple of companies in Dallas. And then the only thing I do import are the soil blockers from like the family that invented them. So
Ladbrook, right?
Yeah, Ladbrook. Yeah. So it's his daughters that have taken on the company now.
Very cool.
So that's the only thing that we get from abroad. Even like our drop seeders, the little clear things that we use. Like I designed those specifically to seed soil blocks. And now we're coming out with ones for like the paper pot trays and the 10 by 20 trays and stuff like that. But I make all those myself. Like I sieve all those by hand. We don't export that labor somewhere. We do all that ourselves.
Wow. Paper pots are getting pretty popular, huh? The paper pot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had mixed appeal. I wound up not using it. Like I used it for a little bit and then wound up not liking it. When I found out how much like every chain, like the paper chain you pull, is about $4. And so if you were going to do a 45-foot chain on a 100-foot bed and you needed 10 chains, that's $40. But like I could pay someone $20 an hour to plant it in an hour. So then it only costs $20 for someone to do it by hand versus a machine to do it in a lot less time. So if I was going to do like acres or an acre of it, then maybe still do the paper pot. But I have an idea in my head of like the next tool I want to do, which is like a automatic transplanter for the soil blockers.
Ooh.
And so you can basically just load your soil blocks in and then just push it, and it would pop all the soil blocks in the ground.
That'd be awesome.
You would need all the paper chains. So it's a time and money. I need more time and money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What would you say like the number one tip is for someone who's like intimidated by it? Because like my thought like on soil blocking is it looks intimidating to me because like I'm like, oh, the block's gonna crumble, it's gonna mildew. Like what's like your number one tip for people who like are intimidated by soil blocks and maybe they just need like a little bit of encouragement? Like what would you tell them?
Probably the biggest thing with soil blocks is they're not going to mildew as well because you have all this good airflow, between the blocks. And the cool thing you can do with soil blocks that you can't do with trays is like my plants never get leggy because if they start to compete with each other, I can literally just spread the blocks apart.
That's smart.
A tray, you can't do that. They're all stuck as permanent neighbors. And so they just start competing with each other and they get leggy. And so what they do, and the farms in Europe still use paper or soil blocks at like a massive scale. And so
really,
it's not like a backyard gardener thing. It's like that's what conventional large farms are using in Europe, and they've got special machines that make them, by the tens of thousands, and transplant them and stuff.
Yeah.
And so for us, it seems like just something backyard gardeners do, but it has huge commercial potential. And then to save you all that plastic and trays, and you get healthier plants. You get, you can harvest earlier, like you can be the first to market because you're transplanting sooner. There's all these benefits from it. So
it's another one of those things that you do more work right here to do less later.
Yep, and you do less later. I use the standing 35 that makes 35 blocks at a time, and it's perfect for any cut flower, lettuces, all my brassicas. I transplant my beets. And I can pick up the whole 35 like in one hand, and I just walk out to the garden and just break them off and like literally throw them from the standing height where they're going to go. And so I don't have to like dig them out of pots and stuff. So it took me more labor to make the block, but then it took me less labor to transplant it. So it's just where you want to put your effort. So if someone is really intimidated by soil blocks, I would say the best thing is to start with a good soil. Doesn't have to be ours by any means. But a good soil that has some nutrition in it because the plants are going to grow really well in a soil block. And then,
do you have a recipe? Do you have like a recipe, like a mixture, like that you prefer for like your mix?
Yeah, I mean, like our recipe isn't anything too crazy. So I would say you could start with a base of either coconut coir tends to be a little too crumbly.
Really?
Still a great option. Like coconut coir is it's like too springy. So like you compress it and then it springs back and falls apart. The way to combat that is to add more and more compost, but then it becomes more and more expensive to make, your mix. And so any like a peat moss with vermiculite and perlite as a base, organic fertilizer, and then like worm castings. Like if that was your mix, your starting point, that would be really great. And everyone has a recipe. Blossom and Branch in Colorado, she's got great peat-free recipes if you don't want to use peat at all. So there's lots of different options. But like if you were just going to go to a big box store and get potting soil, you could totally do that. Maybe sift out the big chunks and then add a little bit more organic fertilizer to it.
Yeah, I might try it out because I've got some Pro Mix, and that's mostly peat and perlite, and it's got some mycorrhizal fungi, and then maybe add some like your worm castings as well. And that should be good. And then the consistency, like how wet do you want it? Because I know it's a trick to that too, right? How wet you want it, right?
Yeah. So if you make the blocks and they crumble apart, you need more water or more compost to kind of make it a little more sticky. If they slump apart, it's too wet. If you like make the block and it just kind of settles out. So you kind of have to keep playing with it until you get that feel for it. But I say it has kind of like a like brownie consistency.
That's what I've seen. Yeah.
You can like scrape it along the bottom and it'll like kind of smear. But if you like use the soil blocker and like push it up against the edge of your container, it like keeps its shape. It doesn't just crumble back. It'll like make a firm edge. That's usually a good indicator.
I really like the idea of this because like you were saying, even with like beets, like root vegetables, like you could do rutabagas like that. And you don't have to worry about transplant shock because those roots are so sensitive. You can start those inside and get a jump on them in the spring.
Well, and like our home garden, I grew on about 1,000 square feet, and last year we did about 2,000 pounds of vegetables on that 1,000 square feet, which is almost all of our vegetables we needed for the season.
That's crazy.
So I focus on root crops, carrots, beets, turnips, rutabagas, cabbage, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and then like tomatoes and peppers. anything that's a space hog, I've never grown okra before in my life.
Oh,
I
man.
love okra, but I can get it so cheap from Joe Schmo
Yeah.
down the street, or zucchinis. There's always people giving away zucchinis. So I stopped growing them and just focus on as much poundage as I can get per square foot. And so for me, like I've got to maximize that space. And so I transplant literally everything except for carrots. And so I can maximize like every single square inch of my garden space because every plant's going to be successful. And so transplanting, that really helped me, like transplanting the beets and the turnips is like my beets will get this big and they're all like perfectly shoulder to shoulder. So I'm maximizing as much food as I can in a small space.
That's so cool, man.
And I love what you mentioned something too, like you grow the things you want to grow and you grow the things that you feel like work well in your space. And then there's someone else that grows another thing. I think that's such an important message to send too. It's like what we do is we supplement our food supply, right? We get the things that we want to grow, that we can grow. And it's such a good way to grow community too and build community because it's like, oh, well, my neighbor Bill is like obsessed with okra, right? He grows 1,000 plants a year and he's drowning in okra. Well, yeah, see, then you work with Bill and you buy the things you need from the store, the luxuries, the other stuff. And I think, one of the drawbacks of, I think, what we do sometimes in our like garden, I don't want to say influencer, it's such a gross word.
Content creator,
garden content space, right?
Yeah.
Is that I think sometimes people get the idea that like everyone that grows a garden is going to grow everything they need for the year out of their backyard. And that's just not real life for most people. And
it's not realistic.
But you can grow a few things that you like, that you really want, and then you meet your neighbors and you meet your community. And again, like you were talking about earlier, when we do things like that, we make like our societies better. We make our communities better. We make our world better just through like getting to know people. And
element
encountering each other.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
Yeah. I think the last thing too, you're about the soil blocks you asked earlier, like, or you said that they're investment, and just like any sort of like quality thing is going to be an investment. But the first soil blocker I had that I got when I got that Elliot Coleman book, so like 15 years ago or something, I still have, and it's a little rusty, but it's still what I'm starting my seeds with. And so I was thinking the other day, like, how many hundreds of thousands of plants has this little thing started? So it costs $45, but like if I break that out versus how much money it saved me over the years, like, oh my gosh, pretty much nothing. And so, I like to at the end of the season, I have a video coming out hopefully soon, once my voice comes back, of how to make my wooden trays for the soil blocks. So like that's not anything I want to gatekeep. I want to share that. And if we buy a farm next year and we're scaling up to like 20 acres, I'm still making wooden trays and doing soil blocks. Like that's I'm sold on it. And the cool thing about the wooden trays too is they bottom water. So like I have a larger metal pan, and then the wooden trays sit inside there, and I just have to keep the pan filled with water, and the water wicks up through the wood and through the block. And so, and then I even have a little automatic filler for the pan, so I could go out of town for 2 weeks and never water my transplants.
Wow, that's insane, man. That's really cool. Yeah, because I was going to ask that because I noticed a lot of people use the wooden pans, like they're like 3-walled pans or whatever. With the I didn't know if you didn't have that, could you just use? Would you want to use a vented plastic tray or whatever? Or do you want to?
I use cedar fence boards, and so I can make them for about $3 a tray, which is as cheap as plastic trays.
Awesome.
That's so smart.
And then but I have used like a mesh bottom tray inside a solid bottom tray.
Yeah.
And so you can set them down in the water pan, the solid bottom tray. But then once they're saturated, I pick them up and I just twist them and like set them on the edges. So it's not sitting down in the water. The blocks aren't in the water. With the wooden version, those blocks aren't in the water either because it's pulling up water through the cedar and then into the block.
Yeah.
So you can't have them just sitting in water. They will get like funky.
Right. So just like those pucks. You don't those pucks are the worst, I think. Oh my God.
Yeah.
They say it breaks down. Those little bags never break down around those. Those are like I hate those are my least favorite seed starting methods. Those pucks.
Yes, yeah. If you're a new gardener, do not use those things. They're
No.
there's no nutrition in them. You know, it's just compressed peat and
Yeah.
they're junk.
Yeah. That's
expensive.
awesome, man.
And they're expensive.
Yeah. Although I did see I saw they started making cocoa core ones, which is I guess better than the peat ones, but like I've seen they say that the little bag breaks down. It never breaks down ever. I dug one out of a raised bed like a couple of years ago, like maybe like last year, and I haven't used those in like 6 years. Like they don't break down. They don't, no matter what they say.
Yeah.
Guys, I've had y'all on for about an hour and a half now. I really appreciate y'all being on. Vikram, real quick, let everybody know what you got going on, what you got coming up. I'm going to pop your Plants to the Rescue link as well. I gave my copy away last weekend at the event.
I'm going to have to mail you one. I'll mail you a signed copy. Yeah, I've got a book, Plants to the Rescue.
Yes.
That's cool, man.
It's for 8 to 11-year-olds or whoever wants it. Illustrated book about cool things in plant science and all the cool technologies that we're working on and how plants are going to help us save the world. And
very cool.
I've got a podcast called Planthropology, which is coming back tomorrow after a 6-month hiatus. And actually the episode coming out tomorrow is about kind of what we were talking about tonight, building community and starting gardening and some tips and tricks and things like that. So I think a lot of folks watching this may enjoy that. But just thanks for having me on, man. It's always fun. I enjoy getting to do this.
Oh, dude, we always love having you on. You're always welcome here, dude. Anytime. I know you're a busy man. You got 3 podcasts of your own, NPR show, and then you got to teach youngsters how to garden. So you got a lot going on, man.
A lot on your plate.
And do you have any artwork to share with us? I know you've been sketching a lot lately. Do you have anything on you?
No. Next time.
He's gone full Jack from Titanic. I see his sketches and they're really good. You do really nice sketches, man. They're really good, actually. I'm proud of you. That's nice, man. Thank you so much for being on, dude. We love having you on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Great having you on, Vikram. It's good to see you, dude.
Absolutely, you too.
Sean.
Nice to meet you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm glad I could connect y'all, and that's cool that you're from like literally down the road from me, Sean, and you also know Tanner. That's really neat. I'm gonna share your link and everything down here to your website. Let everybody know what you got going on, what you got coming up, and everything, man.
Yeah. We are jumping like full force into the spring. So hopefully a lot of like seed starting content and things like that.
Awesome.
So we'll be going to my YouTube page and Instagram. I'm on TikTok too for some reason. I just kind of cross post everything over there. We're hitting the ground running with really trying to focus in on like refining what we're currently doing. So the ship in the high tunnels, getting our soil amendments into more stores. Like I'd love to be in more garden centers and make it a lot more accessible. We're on Amazon now, so we can actually ship. You can order our fertilizers and stuff on Amazon. But I have a whole bunch of things I'm currently working on, but are like kind of under wraps of like new tools and stuff.
Give it under wraps. Don't give out your secrets, dude. Don't give out your secrets.
And so those kind of work on behind the scenes, and then like next year, probably next spring, those will kind of be released. So this year, the big release was kind of like the cultivators. I've been working on that for a long time. So
I will definitely be using that cultivator in the garden. That thing looks cool. I'm gonna put it to work this spring. I'm gonna put it to work.
Yeah. Let me know what you figure out. Like I want to think of how many different ways it can be used.
Yeah.
Infinite number of uses, but
I'll be using it to chase off mockingbirds like a boomerang. Which is funny because I did see a video of a guy. I don't know where he was, but he used it was really cool. It was like a tool, like a club with a bunch of like stones on it, and he threw it at the top of a tree, and a bunch of mangoes fell down. And I was like, that was kind of cool. So yeah, it could be used like that. But thank you, Sean. I really appreciate you coming on, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome back.
Yeah, Sean, this was awesome.
Welcome back anytime, man. Yes, absolutely.
Come hang out, nerd out about plants.
Absolutely. Especially
I'll bring my guitar too. We'll just jam. And
there you go.
Jam out.
There you go.
My voice will be back.
Absolutely, man. Phil, what you got going on. Here's your website. You got cuttings and trees for sale, right?
I got fig cuttings going on right now, at least a little bit longer. I'm gonna have to do a big pruning before everything wakes up, so I can get everything ready. And then I have to buy I have to buy like a chest freezer and convert it into a refrigerator for all my cuttings. So like I'm running out of space. My wife has been so nice for letting me use our family's refrigerator for
man.
this cuttings. I've hit a threshold, but no, I'm getting a soil blocker. I'm sold, man. I'm really stoked on that. I got stuff propagating in the greenhouse. I had a late start because of this. Everyone got screwed by this January across the country. So I'm coming out swinging for the next month when I have time with my 6'3" and 1-year-old.
Wow. Yeah.
I garden in the dark.
Do you sleep, Phil?
I do, and I sleep hard until that whenever they wake me up at whatever hour I need something. But it takes a village. But yeah, fig cuttings on philsfigs.com and doing my YouTube videos and then Facebook and Instagram as well. I never dabbled with the TikTok, so
don't worry about it. It's dead anyway. I can only access it through my desktop. I'm like an idiot. I deleted it off my phone, and so I can only access it when I go on my desktop. So yeah, appreciate you, Phil, always, dude. And I've got to shout out. I have something that just came out this week, and shout out to Dirty Punk Gardening, who does all my merch and everything. We got the Texas Garden Guy shirts that I'm wearing right now. Ooh. Boom.
Yo.
Texas Garden. He did my design. He did everything on there. Him and Alicia, his wife, do my shirts, my hats. They handle all the shipping and everything.
I need to call Jeremy. I gotta talk to him about some stuff.
Dude, and if you're a content creator and you're wanting to like do, because this is my thing. I wanted to get merch out, but I didn't want to have to deal with logistics, shipping, inventory, and all that stuff. And so I worked out a deal with them. Like, I'm not trying to make $1 million. I just want to get my merch out there and get stuff like that and make a good product and not made in China. I want it to be made here. So I'm making less money if I would have just bought it bulk, but they're handling all that stuff for me. So my shirts are $20. I'm keeping it at $20.
Nice.
You can go pick it up. I'll drop the link in the bio, and you're supporting a small business, Primary Print. And that's Dirty Punk Gardening and his wife, Alicia, who have been so fantastic and great for that between the hat. And I just buffered. But thank y'all very much, guys. I really appreciate y'all hanging out. I am going to shut it down. If you'll have any questions, make sure you follow Sean Pessera, Mindful Farmer, Vikram the Plant Prof, and as always, Phil's Figs. See y'all next week.
Great song.